How do we calculate out economic growth rates? Well, we need to go ahead and focus in on real GDP and real GDP per capita. And these are the two most commonly used measures in order for us to calculate out economic growth. So once again, just as a review, real GDP and real GDP per capita right here. Real GDP is total output in a year measured in constant year prices. So we're not taking a look at nominal GDP, we're taking a look at real GDP. Remember, real GDP is accounting for prices or inflation. Remember back in the previous chapter, we talked about converting nominal into real by using our formula there. Real GDP per capita is just taking our measure for real GDP and dividing it by population. So we're controlling for population in this instance. And both of these measures can be used in order to calculate out our economic growth rates. So let's go ahead and do a very quick example of us to show how to calculate economic growth. So a big question that we want to ask in this particular section is how to calculate economic growth. And in terms of calculating out economic growth, there is going to be a formula attached with this, and we already know the formula attached to it. It's just going to be a percentage change formula. So we learned the percentage change formula within the previous chapter with inflation using the CPI and also the GDP deflator, and things are very similar here, except we're just changing the variables up a little bit. Here we have the GDP growth rate, which is what we want to solve for, GDP growth rate. And we're going to go ahead and use our percentage change formula. It's going to be the real GDP, or real GDP per capita, depends on the information that's being provided to you, in our current year, divided by real GDP in the original year. Real GDP in original year. We multiply this by 100, and then close the brackets and subtract out 100 right here. So here, real GDP in the current year divided by real GDP in the original year times 100 minus 100. Remember, current year means just the year that is closest to us. Original year just tells us that it's going to be the year furthest away from us. So it's the same exact formula that we saw under inflation. We just change the variables. Anytime we have a percentage change formula, we're always going to stay consistent with the structure here. We're just changing up the variables a little bit. And remember, you can use the final minus initial over initial as well. In order to build up this formula, you'll get the same exact result. So let's go ahead and put a few numbers to this. Suppose that I tell you that real GDP in 2016, was roughly about 16 trillion. So 16,000, we can just go ahead and say that's 16,000 right here. And the real GDP in the next year, real GDP in 2017, the next year, is going to be 16,820. So $16 trillion, 820 billion. So what we want to do is find out the real GDP growth rate from the year 2016 to the year 2017. And remember that with this formula, you don't need 2 consecutive years in order to find out the growth rate. Then we can easily transform this into 2016 to 2020, but we'd still get the same exact sort of response, the same calculations. So let's go ahead and find the GDP growth rate. GDP growth rate. So what number is going to go on top? The real GDP in the current year. So what's the year that is closest to us? That's going to be our 16,820. So 2017 is the year that is closest to us. And the original year, that's the year that's furthest away from us. That's going to be that 16,000. We want to go ahead, close that brackets, times 100, minus 100, and then go ahead, simplify this into your calculator, simplify as much as you can, plug it into your calculator in order for us to get a one singular number, our answer. When we do this, we get 105.125 minus 100, and as we carry all this out, it's going to give us a percentage which equals to 5.125%. And this singular number right here just says that real GDP increased by 5.125% from the year 2016 to the year 2017. So a 5% real growth rate, that's very fast for any one particular country. So any government official or politician would be very, very happy to see this particular number. But there are a few different ways to report this actual GDP growth rate. We can take a look at the annualized rate or the year-over-year rate. So 2 different methods, and we'll take a look at that in the next particular video. In this example, this is going to be known as a year-over-year rate because we're just going from one particular year to the next year and using this formula. But we'll see what the differences are compared to the annualized rate in the next section.